Good morning, dear students. Today's lecture is on life and works of Thomas Gray. This is Thomas Gray. He was the son of Philip Gray, who was a prosperous scrivener in the city of London. Born in Cornhill on December 26, 1716, he was a delicate boy, the only one of a large family who survived his infancy. And he had a troubled childhood because of his father's harsh and at times violent treatment to his mother, who was obliged to run a milliner's shop in order to pay for the boy's education. So, 26th December 1716 to 30th July 1771. Known as an English poet, letter writer, classical scholar, and professor at Pembroke College, Cambridge, and he is widely known for his elegy written A Country Churchyard, which was published in 1751. His some of very famous quotes from Thomas Gray, if you must have heard: "Full many a gem of purest ray serene, the dark unfathomed caves of Ocean be. Full many a flower is born to unseen, and wastes its sweetness on the desert air. Is folly to be wise?" Another one: "The paths of glory lead but to the grave." And one is one my own favorite is also: "Can honor's voice provoke the silent thirst, or flattery soothe the dull cold ear of death?" Okay, so before moving further, let's have a quick look on the famous poems of Gray. The Bard, which is a Pindaric ode; Elegy written A Country Churchyard; The Fatal Sisters, which is again an ode; Ode on a Distant Prospect of Eton College; Ode on the Death of a Favourite Cat drowned in Tub of Goldfishes; and Ode on the Spring; Ode on the Death of Richard West; and The Progress of Poesy, which is a Pindaric ode. Okay, so the brief introduction: he was born in Cornhill on December 26, 1716, and he was the fifth of 12 children of Philip and Dorothy and Thomas Gray, and the only one to survive infancy. His father, who was a scrivener given to fits of violence, abused his wife Dorothy and left him at one point, but Philip threatened to pursue her and wreak vengeance on her, and she returned to him. From 1725 to 1734, Thomas Gray attended Eton, where he met Richard West and Horace Walpole, one of powerful Whig minister, and he was the son of powerful Whig minister Sir Robert Walpole. In 1734, Gray entered Peterhouse College, Cambridge University. 4 years later, he left Cambridge without a degree, intending to read law at the Inner Temple in London. Instead, he and Horace Walpole sailed from Dover on March 29, 1739 for a continental tour. The two quarrelled at Reggio, Italy in May 1741. Gray continued the tour alone, returning to London in September. In November 1741, Gray's father died. Gray's extant letters contain no mention of this event. So, when we talk about Gray's life, come to know about this foreign tour, which he started in 1739 with Walpole, which eventually became a lone tour for Gray. His impressions of France and Italy on this tour: they was not much impressed by Versailles, but enjoyed very much alfresco party meals on his way up to Chestnut. He saw the most romantic and the most astonishing scenes I ever beheld. Not a precipice, not a torrent, not a cliff, but is pregnant with religion and poetry, which is what Gray actually says. So he was greatly pleased with many things in Italy, his historic sense being strongly appealed to by the rich antiquity he found almost everywhere, and in turning he enjoyed the balls of carnival season with more pleasure than he might have accepted. Okay, so when we talk about his life, we come to know that except for his mother, his fellow Richard West was the person most dear to Gray. and his death from consumption on June 1st, 1742 was a grievous loss to Gray. Wells's death inspired the well-known, and largely because of Wordsworth's use of it, the sonnet on the death of Richard West. Yet it is the shortest and least significant work of the year. The Ode on Spring in 1748 owes something to an ode to West, uh, sent Gray on May 5th, 1742, and an ode on a disciplined prospect of Eton College in 1747 may owe something to West's ode to Mary Magdalene, the hymn to adversity in 1753, and the unfinished hymn to ignorance uh, in 1768. The complete work of the year, which together with 1741 may comprise Gray's most critical emotional period. Alongside Alexander Pope, Thomas Gray is one of the most important English poets of the 18th century, and Samuel Johnson was the first of many critics to put forward the view that Gray spoke in two languages, one public and other private, and the private language that of his best known, most loved poem, Elegy written in a country churchyard, which was published in 1751 as an elegy wrote in country churchyard. It was too seldom heard. William Wordsworth decided in his Preface to Lyrical Ballads in 1798, using Gray's sonnet on death of Richard West 1775 as his example, that Gray, governed by a false idea of poetic diction, spoke in the wrong language, and Matthew Arnold, in an equally well-known judgment, remarked that the age was wrong for a poetry of high seriousness, that Gray was blighted by his age and never spoke out at all. Such judgments sum up the major critical history of Gray's reception and reputation as a poet. Gray's poetry is concerned with the rejection of sexual desire also. The figure of the poet in his poems is often a lonely, alienated and marginal one, and various muses or surrogate mother figures are invoked in a manner somewhat anticipatory of John Keats' employment in similar figures. For aid or guidance, the typical plot of the four longer poems of 1742 has to do with engaging some figure of desire to repudiate, as in the Ode on the Spring, or as in the Eton College Ode, to lament lost innocence. Sometimes, as in the Hymn to Adversity, a harsh and repressive figure is conjured up to rebuke excessive desire and to aid in the formation of the modest and human fraction. The transposed and social form of sexual desire in Hymn of Ignorance, a goddess clearly modelled on Pope's dullness in the Dunciad. We have to study the Dunciad first to understand Gray's interpretations. Is used to rebuke the I who longs for the maternal and demonic presence in different but related ways. These four poems enact the poet's quest for his tutelary spirit, for the muse who will preside over the making of poetic and personal identity. Gray's poems indicate a radical sexual distress. In the Hymn to Adversity, Gray has arrived at the first clear castrative symbolism in the progress of his imagination, though one might argue that the reduction of humanity to insect life in the Ode on the Spring is a significant form of sexual loss. The replacement of virtue by the poet, the threat of castration, is transposed into an acceptance of it. The threatening figure of adversity is specified but requires surrender of sexual identity. In October 15, 1742, Gray returned to Peterhouse as a fellow commoner to read for a law degree. After 1742, he wrote poetry only sporadically. He received an LLB degree in November 1743. He and Walpole were reconciled in 1745 after the dispute in the foreign tour, though the friendship was never again quite as intimate. In July 1768, Gray was made Professor of Modern History at Cambridge, though he never lectured or published on the subject. The most significant personal event of his last years was a brief, intense friendship with a young Swiss student, Karl Ritter von Wanstein. The friendship was apparently complicated by physical desire on Gray's part, though no sexual relation is believed to have occurred between them. In July 1775, Gray became ill while dining at Pembroke College. A week later, on July 30, he died. In his souvenirs, 1832, Bonstetten reflected on the poet and said, Je crois qui grain await, j'avais aim, citate les mots de Lenin, il en était résulté un mystery de coeur qui faisait construire avec son imagination ardent et profonde qui a lieu de faire du bonheur de sa vie n'avait été que la torment. Translation: I think the key of the mystery is that Gray never loved. The result was a poverty of heart contrasting with his ardent and profound imagination, which instead of comprising the happiness of his life was only his torment. Now we talk about Gray's literary achievement, like those of William Collins, James Macpherson, Thomas Chatterton, William Cowper, Christopher Smart, and Joseph and Thomas Wharton were overshadowed by the emergence in 1780s and 1790s of Wordsworth, Coleridge, and quickly succeeding second generation of Romantic writers. So this is a brief introduction of Thomas Gray, and we will be discussing his poetry